Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Military Mondays. If you and I don't know each other, I would love to get to know you. Please private message me or reach out to me so that we can have a conversation. I am retired Major Brenda Sanchez. I served in the Air Force for 27 years on all sides of the Air Force because I served active duty as a spouse and as a reservist. Now, I didn't serve as a traditional reservist. I served as an IMA. And if you don't know what that means, then we really need to have a conversation. So now my husband and I help businesses to acquire and retain customers for life. And I bring you this Military Mondays every single Monday morning at 8 a.m. Mountain Time to feature a business owner that is a veteran or a military member or a spouse. So if that's you, let's have a conversation and maybe I will feature you on a future Military Mondays. But without further ado, I have an amazing lady on. Amber and I met a couple of months ago and have had a few conversations. She's a super neat lady and has a unique background. So thank you so much for being on today, Amber. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me on, Brenda.
So let's start with, you served in the Army National Guard, right? And what was it that you did in the Guard?
So I served as a combat medic for the Minnesota Army National Guard, or 68 Whiskey. And so a big part of my duties were helping to make sure that our unit, our battalion were ready if ever we needed to deploy. Any trainings, taking care of that medical side of things, and training our soldiers on combat readiness and those medical pieces that they could help assist with.
Awesome. And you have a unique story of why did you decide to even join the Guard?
Yes, so I have worked around people with disabilities for a long time, and really that's where everything started. Around the age of 9, I went on a mission trip with my mom to Africa, and I saw a population that was underserved medically, and that really started my desire to help others, coupled with I used to volunteer in the special education rooms growing up around disability. So with those two things coupled together, at the age of 9, I told my mom, I'm going to be a doctor. That's what I'm going to do with my life. And she kind of patted me on the head and she said, okay, sounds great. You're 9, probably don't know what you're going to do yet. Well, that continued. I continued to volunteer in special education rooms. My first job after pollinating corn was working with people with disabilities in a group home at the age of 16. And that I would go to doctor's appointments with them, and some doctors just didn't really know how to handle some of our population that has a little bit more severe disability. And going to the doctor is hard for everyone, especially if you don't understand what's going on. And so I said, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to do missions. I'm going to work with people with disabilities, and I'm going to bridge that gap. Well, I graduated high school a year early. I went on to pre-med, thinking that's what I wanted to do. And about a semester in, I grew up in a town of about 500, 600 people. So going from that to a big university was a huge shock for me. And a huge part of my identity was in academics. So I didn't do so great in school that first semester. It was very hard for me in college. So I said, I'm going to join the military. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to gain some experience. And that's how I ended up being in that 68 Whiskey role as that combat medic. I wanted to really prepare for the pre-med field that I thought I was going into.
Awesome. And that's kind of why I got in the military too, it was for education, and for me it was also that I knew I had a job. I did it in college, but I knew I had a job getting out of college. So I love that aspect of the military and the ability for people to get in the reserves or or do ROTC and know that they have a job and can learn a skill, a hands-on skill versus just education. Because even my daughter, who's a nurse, and she works with the Army, she's not in the Army, but she's a civilian. She went and specifically found an education program that had hands-on, unlike some of the other nursing programs, because she wanted that hands-on experience. So, great way to get into the service. So if you're thinking about getting into the service, or you're thinking about a career field and you're like, I want to know if this is going to work, and you want the education and the practical, you might want to reach out to Amber or myself and see if the military is a good option for you. So join the reserves. You served about 4 years, I believe, and then they medically discharged you. So let's talk a little bit about that and how that led into what you're doing today.
Yes, so served about 4 years. I had some trauma in my past that was unresolved. I hadn't gotten any help for it before going into the military. I really honestly didn't know that it was something that was going to come back up. And so really everything started in basic training. I started having panic attacks, small panic attacks. I didn't know what they were. If we had like a really intense exercise, like if we got smoked for something, that's when I would typically have a panic attack. They were small. Like I said, at first I was able to manage them. I wasn't sure what was going on, but I worked through it. I got through basic training. I went on to AIT to finish out my 68 whiskey training. And there, the panic attack started getting a little bit worse, still manageable. I did have a few that I was actually sent in ambulance to the hospital in AIT. They had asked to discharge me at that time, but I had said, no way, I've worked too hard, I'm staying. And so I worked through that, kind of pushed against getting out. I was determined and I was ambitious, and I said, nope. So I finished that, got into my unit. Unfortunately, the panic attacks got worse. I still didn't seek any mental health treatment because I really thought it was a heart condition, which is so common because of those physical representations. You can't breathe, the heart is pounding, you can't think. A lot of people think this has to be something physical because it's not really out there as common knowledge, the impact that trauma and anxiety can cause to our physical bodies. And so it was actually, who's my husband now today, he had told me at one point, he said, I think you really need to seek some mental help, because I not only was having those panic attacks, I had developed some OCD. So at home, if the shower curtain wasn't just so, I would cry. It was a thing. And he was like, that's just not something that's usual. You should really check that out. I didn't for a long time. And it got to the point where I also developed agoraphobia, where specifically to my unit, driving to drill, I was very suicidal. And then I would step onto premises and sometimes I would just have a panic attack right there. And so, as you can imagine, very debilitating. It was impacting all areas of my life. And I was lucky enough to find an amazing therapist to help me work through some of that trauma. One of the pivotal things for me to work through that trauma was to take away the biggest trigger in my life, which was the military. That's the piece that had triggered me, unfortunately. So that's where my medical discharge came in. And that really actually kind of blessing in disguise almost, where it has brought me where I am today, where I didn't pursue medical pre-med. I actually ended up switching tracks to psychology.
And now you're helping others deal with what you dealt with, and to understand those physical manifestations of anxiety and depression and all of that, because we don't, the medical field wants to find, when you're having your heart racing and that, they immediately think it's your heart or your arteries or something. And it's amazing the physical signs that just anxiety can create in your body. And so if anybody watching this right now, we all know the suicide rate is really high in the military, and it's probably due to either past or traumas that they incurred in the military that they haven't figured out how to deal with. And so if that's you, I really highly suggest that you reach out to Amber, because she's been there, done that, and she's on the other side and can help you to sort through all of that, and hopefully help you to cope with life a little bit better. So let's talk about what you're doing today, because obviously you're counseling, you're helping not just military, anybody, but I know you have a heart for the military and first responders, and I think that's, from our conversations, that's a lot of your clients fall into those categories, which is naturally suited for you. So let's talk a little bit about that. How do people get a hold of you? And then we'll talk about what makes you perfectly suited as a military person to own your own business.
Yeah, so today I own Convenient Colorado Counseling here in Colorado Springs. And I think that the name really says a lot about the practice that I run. I really, when I was looking at starting this business, I was working for a state entity doing counseling for people with disabilities to help them find their passion in work. So entering into work and keeping work. And I really loved it, but I felt like I was just really scratching the surface. So that's what brought me to opening my own practice. And why I called it Convenient Colorado Counseling is when we need to do counseling, and usually it's not a, yay, I'm going to counseling for the first time, sign me up. It's usually a, well, darn it, I need counseling, I need some help. And it's really hard sometimes to tell ourselves that we need that help and to just get in the door. It's even harder to tell our employer that we need time off, to maybe get away from our family. There's just a lot of things that we have going on in life. And same for when I was in counseling. It was really hard for me to sometimes just get in that door. Like I said, I had agoraphobia. It was the worst for the military, but sometimes if someone was just standing by my car, I wasn't leaving the house for the whole day until they left. Or sometimes it triggered me so much, I went back to bed and that's where I stayed. And so I can identify with that. I can understand that to a point. So that's where I offer services in the evenings so that you're not needing to ask your employer, can I have some time off? And having that awkward conversation of whether you decide to disclose or not disclose, that is your choice. But I know that it can be hard to ask for unidentified time off in some of our jobs.
I was going to say the other thing is that helps military who have security clearances. It's also confidential with you, that they can come and get help so that maybe they don't get medically discharged or lose their, it might not even be medical. They could get a dishonorable discharge with mental issues because it manifests into other things that then you aren't doing the job the best. And we don't want that. We want everybody to have an honorable discharge one way or another if the military isn't the right fit for you. So I love that it, like you said, it's convenient. It's when they can get in, which is usually nights and weekends, outside of the normal counseling hours. So I love that. Let's talk a little bit, because we talked about this before we went live. What skills did you learn in the military that make you perfectly suited to own your own business, whether it be a counseling business or a side gig, crafts, doesn't matter. What are the skills that you learned that you think make you a successful business owner?
Yeah, so this is one that I thought a lot about. And the thing that kept popping into mind every time, and I use it a lot actually, I say it a lot, is the saying, the phrase, embrace the suck. And I think we all maybe learned that in basic training. Seems pretty common. And that saying seems like it would be maybe a negative saying. When you're not in the military, you say it to other people and they're like, how is that a good thing? But I really think it is. I think that it has really helped me. It's something that I go back to, especially maybe when I'm feeling a little anxious still today. And I say, well, embrace the suck. And to me, that means, I have the strength to work through it. There are going to be challenges. There are in any business, no matter what that looks like, there's going to be setbacks. I mean, look at the COVID-19 that we are having and how that's impacted businesses, and the ability to pivot and change and embrace those things that we do not have any control over is so important. And the military just very much so taught me that not everything is in my control, and that is okay. It's finding what are those creative ways, what are those different ways that I can adapt and change and pivot. And I think that that's important for any business.
Awesome. Well, is there anything that we didn't talk about today that you wanted to share that maybe we just haven't touched yet?
One thing I would like to share is not only are we convenient in the way of the timing that we meet with people, also I have a hybrid model that I meet with people, meaning I have telehealth and in-person available, which I think is just incredibly important when we're talking about mental health services. That's not always been something that's been offered. And that's something that was just very important to me when opening this practice, because I had a time where I would not be able to make it to appointments for my mental health. And it would have been so incredibly nice to be able to tell my therapist, can we just video chat today? And that's okay, as long as we're making that connection.
I love that. And I love that for a couple of different reasons. One, like you said, you might just be feeling so anxious you don't even want to get in the car to go to the counseling, but you could still have it. But two, that opens you up to meeting with anybody anywhere in the world. So you don't have to be, just because it's Convenient Colorado doesn't mean you got to be in Colorado to reach out to Amber to get some support and help, which I absolutely love. Not all counselors will do that for people.
And I think another huge thing too is I am private pay. So everything is private pay, meaning it doesn't go through insurance, which is nice because that means that all of my services are completely confidential. They're not third-party confidential. I'm not reporting anything to an insurance company, no diagnosis, nothing like that. So that means that whoever works with me has the choice. We can have that conversation of, do you want me to document a diagnosis, or do we just talk about it here in the room? How much do you want in your file? If someone doesn't want a whole lot in their file, that's okay. We talk about that in session and they make that choice, so that if for some reason, which is very rare, records were subpoenaed, there's not going to be much there.
Awesome. So I usually ask the question, what words of advice would you have for somebody looking to get out of the service? But I'm going to change that today. That's what I told you we were going to talk about, but I'm going to pivot. And based on our conversation, I would like you to share some words of advice for somebody who might be in the service right now, or a first responder that is maybe feeling anxious and isn't sure whether they should see a counselor or not. What words of advice would you have for them?
My words of advice would be, take that first step and just reach out. If you have any inkling that maybe I need some help, or maybe a therapist would be right, because I think even just from my experience and people I've talked to, that thought comes across our mind. I mean, my motto for my business is, I'm there for you when you say, oh shit, I don't know what to do next. If you're thinking that, reach out to someone. If that's me, great. If it's someone else, great. Every good counselor, every good therapist will have a free consultation that's usually over the phone, 15 to 30 minutes. I do the same thing. So you can talk to them, no obligation, and just see, is this something I need?
Awesome. I love that. And I think we should end there, because if you are feeling that you're not sure if you should talk to somebody, please reach out to Amber. Like she said, she has a free consultation. She's going to put her contact information in the comments below so you can reach out to her. But I just know from the conversations I've had with her that she just has a calming personality, that no matter what's going on in life, that she just, there's a peace when you're talking to her. So reach out to her and hopefully she can bring a little bit of peace into your life. So with that, thank you so much for being on today, Amber. I appreciate you taking some time out of a Monday morning and being here with me and sharing with my audience.
Thank you, Brenda.
So if you are a military member or a veteran or the spouse of a military member or veteran and you have your own business, please reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation with you. You can go to militarymondays.info. So militarymondays.info. You can see past shows. So go watch some of the other amazing business owners and learn about their businesses. And that's where you can put in the request to have a meeting with me to see if you are a good fit for Military Mondays. So with that, everybody have a super fantastic week, and I will see you next Monday on Military Mondays. Bye, everyone.